Prime on this 11th day of January 2024. Hello, good morning. I trust that you had a lovely restorative night and you're ready for the day. Being a Thursday, it's a wet morning, so make sure also you dress up and layer up at least warmly so that you may be, of course, able to face the day today. Today we train our focus on what is happening on the economy right now, and the farmers now are waking up also to news that they will be, of course, taxed 5% withholding tax. That will be the crop tax that the KRA is seeking. We shall be looking at that and other issues as well regarding the state of the economy, looking at the 2024 outlook. How will it be when moving forward, especially in regard to the economy that seems to be contracting right now, but the World Bank also seems to be bullish that it's giving a growth projection for this year as well. We shall be looking at what the purchasing manager index that the survey there has been proffered by the Stanbic Bank right now, that is also showing not a very sanguine and optimistic outlook from the private sector regarding to this year's economic outlook. We shall be teasing out that as well with our panelists today. I'm joined this morning by Engineer Patrick Obath, who is the chair of KCSE Foundation. Also, we have with us Professor Gituro Wanaina, who is a professor at the School of Business, University of Nairobi. We shall be joined by Dr. J. McPhee, who is also a lecturer at Strathmore University School of Business, and Dr. Shemo Cholo, who is the chair of Kenya Diaspora Alliance this morning. Right, before we move on, let me just hear their voices, of course, this year, how it sounds, whether it's turned to be a tenor, soprano, or baritone, or a bass. Good morning, Patrick, good to see you.
Good morning, good morning. It's not a bass anymore, it's, it's sort of, it's been hovering at bass over Christmas when it's been on leave. And right now, we are back to baritone, and we're operating. And yeah, it's indeed, we had an interesting year in 2023. With everything going helter-skelter, cost of living, everything else. And really, 2024, when you look at it, literally more of the same thing. It's looking to be another a year when really we are not seeing anything on the horizon that is really going to kick positive thoughts into our minds. That really is my first month of the year thoughts on 2024.
Right.
And I think we just have to, there are different ways of managing life. Rather than saying serikali he, serikali that, which is what we're used to. I think we just have to, as Kenyans, change the way we think, the way we do things. And, for want of a better word, just say that, the government is doing what the governments do, but Kenyans have to live their lives. There's a certain things that the government does. It can do them well, it can do them badly, but we just have to live with what that is, because those are the leaders we elected, and that's what you're paying for.
So you're saying it is what it is?
Yeah, you're stuck for the next 5 years with what it is. Yeah.
Good morning, good to see you.
And I think it goes to the point you're making that Kenyans, in their own way, they have a lot of respect for the Constitution.
Yeah.
They have a lot of respect for the law. And the law has given the legitimacy to whoever is having that position.
Yes. And
as you should respect the such person. I think that is the point, a very strong point. And I hope everybody else can have that respect for the law. But the more point is the script, perhaps, is carrying the same narrative, if not worse. So the polls in December showed that we are a bit optimistic, and I think Kenyans, we are optimistic people. And therefore is to see, how do I make this glass? It's half full. How do I make it full? And there are certain ingenuity ways of dealing with that, and that's a positiveness we have to look at as we go forward in 2024. The narrative seems to be the same. So it's you and I as Kenyans to see how do I change, how do I really ring-fence myself, how do I become resilient to whatever is happening in the country. Yeah. But notwithstanding that, you can be pushed so far.
Yes.
Yes.
So I was just reading because I know you want to going back to get the last word of the Business Daily, and I knew this one will pick up also your interest, even as you're saying the narrative and the self-talk.
Right.
Should change. We have Bruce Lee who's saying, don't speak negatively about yourself. Even as a joke, your body doesn't know the difference Words are energy and they cast spells. That's why it's called spelling. Change the way you speak about yourself and you can change your life. Of course, remember Bruce Lee.
Why are you reading
well.
from there?
The last one.
Oh, at the back.
You're the one who normally picks up on that.
Yes, in the last word.
Yeah, in the last one.
Okay, good student.
Yeah, so
that's by Bruce Lee, yeah?
Yeah, by Bruce Lee.
Excellent, absolutely.
So we should change the way we speak negatively about ourselves as Kenyans as well. Dr. Shoma Chodho, good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning. Happy New
Happy
Year,
2024.
and colleagues and Kenyans.
Yeah, thanks.
You know, I was hoping that Professor was going to talk about, instead of looking at the glass as half empty, look at it as half full. But instead, he elected a different narrative. I think we're coming out of a very bad year. We are optimistic that this year will be better. I think government has to get fully in tandem with the thinking of the Kenyans, because the Constitution demands of it. The Constitution says there must be public participation. So often you have to weigh the mood of the flock that you're leading, even though you may be leading them in a good direction. But of course, there are people who keep putting smiles on Kenyans. They keep our economy running. I don't want to mention them today, we know them. And I think the outlook is good. It's for us to maintain it that way, but government, particularly in terms of policies on taxes, have to make it easier for business to grow so that we can tax more, and also to have a predictable and stable tax regime, because that's where our major problem is. Of course, not to mention the other issues of high cost of energy, the cost of living, and so on. But I'm hoping something that one of our colleagues has always called for, that's Kiprono Kitonyi, a national economic conference. It's long overdue. There are Kenyans out there who have got lots and tons of ideas, not just ideas. Some of them, they're already walking the talk that could help turn around the economy.
So we should have a national economic conference. I think you've been talking about it since last year.
And we'll keep talking about it until it happens, because we don't see many other ways of transforming the economy and, let me call it, rebooting it, because it needs to be rebooted.
Right. So there's a lot that we want to...
I think there's a huge assumption there.
There's a huge assumption?
That whoever you're talking to will listen.
It's listening.
Yes, will listen.
You know, the Bible says...
But I like the word, we need to reboot. You know?
Absolutely.
Yes.
And the Bible says, just talk to them, even if they're stones, they are hearing.
Okay, you heard me, but...
That's right.
All right. There's a lot that we shall be discussing on. Of course, you get a driver show with us. You can hit us on X right now. KTN, at KTN News is the Twitter handle. Also my Twitter handle at Dibal Ainair. Let's see what is fresh off the press this morning. And we begin with the bold paper. This is the Standard, and what is headlining this morning is all about academia. KCSE, where did this 175,000 students go? That is their burning question splashed on the front page of the Standard this morning. If you may just have it in full, please. And we have transition in 2020. Over 1 million students joined Form 1 under Uhuru administration's 100% transition from primary to secondary school policy. But the just released KCSE examination results shows that only slightly under 900,000 students sat their test. Where did 175,000 students go over the 4 years? That is a burning question, and the story continues on page 2 of the Standard this morning. The figures broken down for you: 1,075,201 number of students admitted to Form 1 in 2020, 899,453 the number of candidates who sat KCSE in 2023, 175,748 students who cannot be accounted for and may have dropped out of school in the past 4 years. That story, well fleshed out for you, as I've mentioned on page 2. Just looking at the policy there, the former president's administration initiated 100% transition policy for students from primary to secondary school. And we have the execution of it as well. The education minister downplays school dropout rate, says measures in place to ensure that 100% transition is successful. That is according to Ezekiel Machogu, Cabinet Secretary of Education. Still on the front page of the Standard today, behold our fallen academic giants. In their heyday, they were the academic powerhouses that ruled the country with exemplary performances that attracted praise. Today, these schools have drifted off the top of the table and are now fighting for a comeback. You have a story there on page 4 and 5 of the Standard today. And also remember, you can get all the wires every Thursday as far as real estate is concerned. That is a story that you want to follow inside business or the business side of the Standard today inside the publication. ODM shakes up elections body. Raila Odinga's party disbands its National Election Board, hands over the role to a two-tier election management system at the county and national levels. You can follow the story on page 7 of the Standard this morning. Let's see what the teaser also has for us on top here. Blame cash crunch. Treasury chief tells MPs on CDF delays. Even after the president announced that has hit their accounts, nothing seems to have come to bear. Now we have the Treasury saying there is no money. Show me the money. Right, this is what the legislators are waiting for, so that they may be able also to steamroll the bursaries within counties right now. Farms see dim growth prospects. Farms seem dim growth prospects. This is on the business pages of the Standard this morning. On page 19, US-UK fight off attacks in Red Sea. That is on page 24. Chelsea feel the blues. You can follow the story on page 40 of the Standard this morning. The Daily Nation, more pain as NSSF rates set to go up. And the flagger reads, pensions, state expected to calculate monthly deductions based on lower and upper earning limits. There's confusion here as the first year of implementing the NSSF Act 2013 lapses this month. The Ministry of Labour and the fund are yet to inform employers and employees about how the next level of new hire deductions is to be arrived at in the graduated plan that will eventually take away 6% of the workers' salaries. You have a story on page 7 of the Daily Nation this morning. Raila to craft new coalition for 2027 race. This is according to Wandai, National Assembly Minority Leader Opiyo Wandai. In a wide-ranging interview, reveals what his boss, as Mayor Leader Raila Odinga, is planning ahead of the next elections. You have a story laid out for you on page 4 and 5 of the Daily Nation. Governors, now they're fighting state over ECDE takeover. Governors will boycott the Intergovernmental Relations Technical Committee meeting as scheduled for Tuesday next week to discuss the implementation of recommendation by the Presidential Working Party on education reforms on how best to manage the sector. This move, the governors said, is in protest against proposals to have the management of over 30,400 early childhood development and education centers under the national government. And this story is on the back page of the Daily Nation. The national government clawing back on this as well after it had been devolved. Now that seems to be the contention here. Trump warns of bedlam in US if he is put on trial. Judges wary of his claim to presidential immunity. You have a story on page 23 of the Daily Nation this morning. And court to rule on the rollout of HIF or SHIF plan. State wants the order of suspending law lifted. You have the story on page 7 of the Daily Nation this morning. People Daily, hot scramble for school bursaries. Students from poor backgrounds caught up in desperate search for scholarships as those offered by corporates and MPs fall short. And you can see also a quote there from James Mwangi, Equity Board, saying, I looked at the records and 56,000 applied, but in this hall, we only have 1,000. So it means you are in top 1.7% of all the scholars. This is when he was rolling out the Wings to Fly scholarship. You can follow the story inside the People Daily this morning. Raila moves to revamp ODM, and the story is tucked on page 6. Our top officials looted NHIF dry, and now this is what we have here. More pain as this is NSSF, and we know the story about NHIF now that is morphing to SHIF as well. But you can read all about it on page 3 of the Newsbeat this morning, and we can buckle down to business a bit. KRA now is eyeing over 14 billion shillings from 5% farm produce tax. This is the crop tax. Tea, sugarcane, milk cooperatives to be larger sources. More farmers could be pushed to informal markets. The government is eyeing at least 14.3 billion shillings in additional revenue in the proposed withholding tax of the 5% on farm produce sold through cooperatives. As a Business Daily analysis shows this, this even as agricultural experts fear the new tax measures aimed at widening the tax base is likely to be counterproductive, as it could push farmers to informal channels for selling their produce directly to consumers rather than through cooperative societies. Official data shows that by end of 2022, selected crops valued at 286 billion shillings were sold through marketing boards, including cooperative societies and factories. Now, this is the new reality that the farmers are waking up to now, right now, with a withholding tax of 5% on their farm produce, where KRA seeks to reckon 14 billion shillings taxes and more taxes. January prices, that is power prices, to increase 16.5% on fuel and forex exchange charges as well. Kenyans will pay as much as 16.5% more in electricity prices this month after the energy regulator raised fuel and foreign exchange charges on the commodity in what is set to slow down the easing of the cost of living recorded in recent months. And you can follow the story on page 4 of the Business Daily this morning. Kenya Power settles 35.6 billion shillings power purchase debt, and British pound official rate crosses now to 200 shillings mark. The official shilling exchange rate against the British pound has crossed over to the 200 shilling mark, boosting the earnings of horticultural exporters to the UK and parts of Europe that trade using the currency. And CBK is warning of mobile money fraud risk on unverified SIM cards. The Central Bank of Kenya has warned mobile money services or service providers and banks of the rising risk of fraud from more remote registration of customers. That story continues on page 2 of the Business Daily this morning. Let's see what we have across the border. And we go to Uganda, where billions are wasted now in expired medicine. Billions west in expired medicine. This is an audit report revealing this. The 2022-2023 annual audit of the government spending disclosed that COVID-19 vaccines worth 28 billion shillings bought using a World Bank loan and grant, and ARV drugs worth 33 billion shillings have expired. You can read the story inside the Daily Monitor this morning, where it continues on page 4 and 5. Katanga's daughter remanded to Luziro. This is Miss Martha Nkwanzi, daughter of the late Henry Katanga, at Nakawa Chief Magistrates Court in Kampala yesterday. Miss Nkwanzi joins her sister and 2 others who have been remanded over the murder of the businessman. You can follow the story on page 5 of the Daily Monitor. NAM gives us opportunity to push our agenda. This is according to Ayabare, and the rest of the details inside on page 6 and 7 of the Daily Monitor this morning. Flash mob robbers rock Kampala cities. Many merrymakers in Kampala's upscale suburbs and malls saying thugs attacked and robbed them during the Christmas season and particularly on New Year's Eve. This story continues on page 3 of the Daily Monitor this morning. In Tanzania-India trade valued to be second highest in Africa, with bilateral trade set to surpass 7 billion shillings this year. Tanzania will overtake Nigeria and become India's second biggest trading partner in Africa, behind South Africa. And you can follow the story there on page 5 of the publication today. Also plan to hold fishing on Lake Tanganyika draws mixed views. All that tucked away on page 2 of the Citizen in Tanzania. Health Ministry outlines priorities for 2024. You can read all about it inside today's publication. EAC's plan to boost intra-regional trade in next 5 years also is all spread out for you to read inside the Citizen. In Rwanda, more polluters of 4 major lakes revealed. What next? That is the probing question. Over 30% of industries don't treat wastewater due to limited capacity. And you have the story on page 3 of the New Times this morning. Inadequate financing biting into Rwanda's mineral revenues. This is according to officials. 2024, Rwanda to lead economic growth in East Africa. This is according to the UN report. Rwanda to lead economic growth in East Africa. That is the projection that we have from the UN report in regard to Rwanda. We shall be discussing this as well moving forward. All right, let's see also what the East Africa is holding this week. Why Uganda-Kenya fallout may not last. They are important trading partners in spite of spats, and the divorce would impact intra-EAC trade. But besides, Kampala's options may prove more expensive. You have the story continuing inside the East African this morning. China Daily. Maldivian leader upgrade relations, and you can see them here. This is President Xi Jinping shaking hands with the visiting president of the Republic of Maldives, Mohamed Muizu, in Beijing on Wednesday. The two head of state announced the elevation of bilateral ties to a comprehensive strategic cooperative partnership. You can read all about it inside the China Daily today. China-US restarts key defense policy dialogues, and also Davos meeting an essential opportunity for rebuilding trust. That is an opinion there by Ling Chang inside the China Daily. All right, we shall be looking at the tail cartoon. Which way now for Azimio? And you can see this contraption of a car. I don't know what vintage it is. If maybe Geturo will tell us if his first car was like this. Yeah?
Morris might know something.
This is a mini Morris. Right? It's a mini Morris that is sort of a U-shaped, or a horseshoe shaped. It's headed. There's a Kamwene sign and also there's a Mu sign. As you can look at it right now, this is in the Daily Nation.
It's interesting. Kamwene is so pedestrian, you know.
Kamwene is so pedestrian.
Ours.
Oh, okay. Kamwene.
Yes.
This is ours.
This is ours.
Right, and this is the latest development within Azimio. As you can see it here, this is according to Victor. Kalonzo Tosha. And you can see the horse. I mean, he's perched on top of the horse there. And Raila Odinga seemed to be actually perched on a donkey. This is Kalonzo Tosha. This is what was on as drawn today inside the Star. Shall be showing you also what we have inside the People Daily today, according to Steno. All right, let me just drop in Dr. Jim McPhee to just also greet us before we buckle down to some news and tell us his prediction about this year as well. You've just seen from what we've read in the New Times that in Rwanda, you have the UN reporting that they are bound to be leading this year, according to the projection as far as the economy is concerned, so overtaking Kenya, Uganda and Tanzania. Good morning.
Good morning and Happy New Year to you, Debal. I'm sorry I'm a bit late. I had problems with the car, but I'm here. You know, I was in a bit of a crisis this morning because of that. But anyway.
Oh, it's been resolved?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. But anyway, it's good to see you. And you see, I know that Wainaina always thinks that I'm an agent of Rwanda, but you know, the facts on the ground prove the case. You know? He says, you know, look, I think you're, I don't know what the equivalent to the CIA is in Rwanda, but he says, you're an agent of the CIA in Rwanda, okay? You're always promoting Rwanda, but you see, you know, the last time I was here, in fact, I was with Patrick, I was with yourself, I was with Bello Kero, but, you know, what we're talking about is leadership.
Right, yeah.
And what we have in Rwanda is a true leader. He's a leader of Rwanda. He thinks about Rwanda. He doesn't think about himself. And we were actually saying, you know, look, here in Kenya, it is a leadership problem. And this is what we've got to resolve. We've got to have people at the top of Kenya who are thinking about Kenya, who put Kenya before themselves. If we don't do this, we're going nowhere. We're going to find country after country after country overtaking us. I remember a number of years ago, I was actually in Rwanda, checking with headquarters there. You know, I'm joking, but I was doing some work for one of the big four firms in Rwanda. And I noticed that the Rwanda franc was losing value against the Kenya shilling. Now that's different today. You know, we have today in the newspaper, the pound has actually gone over 200 shillings per pound. So, you know, we have a real problem in Kenya. And, you know, we're living beyond our means. The exports of the DRC are 4 times those of Kenya. Now, the position is that, we've just had it reported that our balance of trade with the rest of Africa is now at record levels. But if 2 years ago, it was 200 billion, today, because of the depreciation of the Kenya shilling, if it's not at least 300 billion, we're actually earning fewer dollars from our exports. So, we've got to recognize, look, government has got to cut back on its spending. We can't just go on spending as if we were, millionaires. Maybe I'm wrong. I know that you're an economist.
This is what you're saying.
Okay, you recorded me. You see, I didn't realize that he is actually in the CIA.
He has a very interesting here, and somebody sent me over midnight last night, and I didn't want to repeat what he's saying. And we know this narrative. The Singapore Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew said, there are two options for me. Either I get corrupted and I put my family in the Forbes list of the richest people in the world and leave my people with nothing. Or I serve my country, my people, and let the country be in the list of the best 10 economies in the world. I chose the second option. That's Lee Kuan Yew.
Yeah.
McPhee here and his brothers, the African politicians, said there were two options for us two. But as the second option was already taken by the Singapore Prime Minister, we choose. We had no choice than the first one. So exactly that's what you're saying. The choices we make as leaders really make all the difference. Today, Singapore is perhaps, if you look at the performance in maths and science and whatever, they're actually number one in the world from UNESCO last year. That says a lot about that particular economy. Just that education. Well, really we are seeing here, 55% to 60% are scoring Ds.
Yeah.
In this country.
Correct. Yeah. Well, a D+.
We are worried more people who are stealing exams than the ones who are there and they are performing so poorly. If you can't address secondary school in any country, forget about the university. Secondary, middle level cadre. These are the ones who go to technical institutions. These are the ones who go to the university. That's the backbone of any in terms of education in the country. So you are spot on, my senior.
Am I really your senior?
Of course. Age-wise and everything else.
He has taken the option of senior off the table.
All right, we shall also...
But the ball on that Rwanda, I didn't realize there are many advocates for Rwanda. Having worked for the government of Rwanda for years, I can confirm that the leadership is very visionary one, very selfless, and to a very large extent incorruptible. So a lot of things, and of course gender sensitive. Rwanda being the only country on earth where there are more women parliamentarians than their male counterparts, followed just closely by Sweden.
We'll be there soon.
So yes, there are lots of lessons I think we can learn from Rwanda. The economy, we aren't in a good place, no doubt. The fact that Kenya shillings just in the past year has lost, I think, about 22% of its value is something that should be worrisome. Before Dr. McPhee came in, there was the talk of a national economic conference. I think sooner rather than later, we need to do this. Government going in a way that you like it, you don't like it, we are going this way. I think that can only harm the economy more. And they say when you're already in a ditch, you don't dig deeper. I think that would be the advice I would give the Kenya Kwanza government.
All right, and talking about Kenya Kwanza government, there has been a spat across all the judiciary. And for the umpteenth time, President William Ruto continued with his attacks on the judiciary. If we may just roll up the auto cue for me, we continue up with the story. This has been a story that has been in the public domain right now. And we want to just begin with that particular story right now to see what is the reaction also from members of the Judicial Service Commission. And as I've mentioned, he has continued with his attacks on the judiciary, warning he will deal with corrupt judicial officers. The president said he will not be deterred from his focus on ending corruption in the country and warned his political opponents against using the judiciary to hold government hostage. He was speaking during his development tour in Laikipia County. Clement Masomo starts us off.
President William Ruto intensified his efforts to call out the judiciary, saying he would kick out the corrupt individuals sabotaging his government's agenda. The president said all government projects will continue despite court orders putting brakes on some programs. His stance has angered a cross-section of Kenyans.
Nilisema juzi tuwache ufisadi kule kwenye mahakama zetu. Nani ajui hapa kuna ufisadi inaendelea mahakamani? Sijui kama tunaelewana. Nimesema ufisadi anywhere. Ufisadi in the executive, ufisadi kule kwenye legislature, ufisadi kule kwenye mahakama, lazima tupigane nayo.
He was speaking during his development tour of Laikipia County, where he commissioned the affordable housing program in Nanyuki town, which paved the way for the construction of the first phase of 200 housing units.
3 things: incompetent leadership, vested interest, and corruption. And we must deal decisively with all of them.
The head of state vowed to take action against corrupt judges, who he said are after blocking his efforts in addressing unemployment among the youth through the affordable housing program. He added that he wants a good working relationship between the 3 arms of government.
Na wale wameenda kotini ni watu wezi na wakora ambao wanaiba pesa kwa NHIF. Na mimi nawajua. Na mimi nimewaambia tayari, hii pesa hamutaiba tena.
He was accompanied by other leaders, including his deputy Rigathi Gachagua and majority leader in the National Assembly Kimani Ichung'wah, among others.
Sisi rais, we made the right decision. Na watu wale wanapiga kelele, muende mpige kelele pahali ingine. Watu katika eneo hili ni watu wamesoma na ni watu wako na akili.
Na ile shamba yeyote inahitajika kufanya affordable housing, sisi kama county government tutaipatiana ndio vijana wetu waweze kupata kazi.
Kwa hivyo sisi tunaangalia uongozi wa rais. Pengine utakuwa na shida mahali ingine. Lakini hapa kwetu Laikipia East, niseme Laikipia East. Na mimi naelewa siasa ya huko West kidogo wa shida atasema na kwingine. Lakini sisi maneno ya serikali ahadi imeweka.
The team later proceeded to launch the construction of roads in Laikipia East constituency and finally at Nyahururu town, where they commissioned the Nyahururu new KCSE plant. Clement Masombo, KTN News, Laikipia County.
And meanwhile, in an apparent response to President William Ruto's incessant attacks on the judiciary, the Judicial Service Commission has told politicians to keep off the affairs of judiciary and respect its independence. The JSC Vice Chair, Macharia Njeru, hit out at politicians attacking judiciary, saying they were undermining its performance. Speaking at Embu Law Courts during an engagement forum with stakeholders and court users, Macharia observed that judges or magistrates make their ruling depending on the evidence presented to them, and added if there was any complaint, those dissatisfied should use the right procedures.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
A judge or JU only responds through the pen, and they do that by writing judgments or rulings. So if you have evidence of corruption, what you do is that the Constitution, that's why the Constitution created an institution called Judicial Service Commission. You present it, then appropriate action is taken. And Judicial Service Commission has done that before. We are aware of judges who have been removed before. We are aware of judicial officers who have been removed before. But based on evidence that has been presented, then the due process, following. So we don't have an issue with somebody raising an issue as long as we accept that there has to be due process.
President William Ruto has sustained his onslaught on the judiciary for the past 1 week, training his guns on the judges he believes are corrupt. His threats of disobeying court orders from the alleged corrupt judges appear to be taking root even in Parliament, where the Finance and Planning Committee and the Housing Committee plan to roll out public participation in the Affordable Housing Bill 2023, despite the fact that the courts stopped it until the matter is determined. But as KTN's political affairs reporter Emmanuel Tona reports, more voices have come up asking President Ruto to follow the laid down procedures if he has any issues against judicial officers.
Nani ajui hapa kuna ufisadi inaendelea mahakamani? Sio kama tunaelewana.
It is the latest in a string of sustained week-long attacks against the judiciary by President William Ruto, who has alleged corruption in the corridors of justice. In his onslaught, the head of state maintains his mission to rid the judiciary of corruption is unstoppable, although he has not stated how he will go about it. The law on removal of judges from office is through the setup of a tribunal.
If the executive has evidence and perhaps they're finding it difficult to present it to the Judicial Service Commission, we invite them to present it to the Law Society. We will look at it, we will review it, and we will prepare the necessary petitions.
The calls by the bench and the bar and the opposition by extension to have him back on track seem to be falling on deaf ears. As it appears, the president's threats to defy court orders is slowly infiltrating parliament, where he enjoys massive support. Legislators are now plotting to continue with public participation on the Affordable Housing Bill 2023, despite active orders barring the same.
You cannot gag an independent body to do their work. Unless now the courts tell us then, who do they expect to make laws? Because the same way Parliament cannot make judgment and we cannot issue court orders.
Pundits argue the president is completely off the rails.
That he should desist from telling people that we have a corrupt judiciary or we have corrupt judges. Again, as I've said to you, there are ways of handling that problem. If he has any evidence, let him hand over this evidence to the Judicial Service Commission. Let him hand the evidence to the Chief Justice. Let him hand this evidence to the Attorney General.
You can question the decision, but you should not be seen to threaten the judiciary, the other arm of government. So it is very unfortunate for the president that he gives the impression that he wants to cut everybody to size and every institution to his size, whatever that is.
Then the president cannot be the one leading the allegations against those judges when he is the one who is supposed to form the tribunals leading for their removal. That role should be left to other parties.
The president, who had shown signs of climbing down from his hard stance on the judiciary, seems to have gotten back to the head-on collision with the judiciary, an independent body according to Article 159 of the Constitution of Kenya.
Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, I practiced law during his regime. I was a magistrate during his era. At no stage did he ever try to belittle judges. To the contrary, he extended respect to them. That is the way things should be done.
If this trend continues, it's likely to be worse than it was between 1982, that's 1982 and 1988. Because in 1982, that's when Parliament, which again was docile, passed Section 2A.
Emmanuel Tor, KTN News, Nairobi.
Right, and looking also at the editorial cartoons, we can see how that has been depicted by the cartoonist there. I'm not backing down, and you can see the balance, or the scale there, where we have the president trying to cut that particular balancing. What do you normally call this? This scale?
Weighing scale.
Yes, the weighing scale itself. But on top there, where the president is using a saw to cut it right now, I'm not backing down, totally is not. We can see also our way or the highway. And yes, the way the parliament also is involved in this together with the president, as you can see it, to frustrate the judiciary. Before we continue with the business stories as well, I wanted just to hear, so far you've been following these stories, Patrick Obath, Dr. Professor Gichoro Wanaina, also Dr. J. McPhee, and Dr. Shemo Chwodo, what has been your assessment? Let's begin with you, Engineer Bajagaba.
I think for me it's just unfortunate that we begin to sort of vilify institutions that are vested in that are sort of in the Constitution in a public area. I mean, we need to respect institutions. It's like if I was to now start talking the same way about the presidency, what would people think? Because that is as an important institution in this country that has a role to play in the country. So to take institutions that are supposed to bring some semblance of order in the country into the public court is very unfortunate. My concern with that is that that kind of pronouncement and then going ahead and doing things in full disregard to judicial process is sending a signal to Kenyans. And if that can be done, what happens then to the enforcement of law? People will then take the same attitude and it will then permeate the whole society. And that is the bigger concern, because it means that if I can go and do things despite a court order, and a court order and the judicial system has got its checks and balances, which are enshrined in the Constitution. Now, if I can ignore all that and do stuff, who then will take the orders of the police when they're trying to enforce the law? It means that battles between Wananchi and police are going to increase. And that basically means we're leading the state to anarchy. So my concern is not, I mean, I think the government is probably fully in its right to be annoyed about what is happening, right? But they should follow due process, but not to make roadside announcements about the fact that certain things should happen and threaten individuals. We know there's corruption. And it's a fact. It's a corruption in government, there's a corruption in the judiciary, there's a corruption everywhere, including the policemen on the side of the road. Let us tackle that. Let us have an all-out war on corruption as a big thing in Kenya. That, I think, for me, would be a bigger thing than saying there are corrupt judges who are stopping, a particular thing in court, right? We all feel the same way when we are aggrieved in court. You think that somebody in court there is being paid by somebody else to do something. Yet, the evidence that you present, what you put on the table, is what makes the judgment come out. And if you don't have sufficient people within the executive who can go and argue those cases, then you need to look at your own officials. There was a time when we used to say that the government has never won a case in court. And we used to say the Attorney General's office of those days was such that it never was not able to prosecute effectively. So what happened? They put in the office of the public prosecutor to try and create capacity to be able to win cases, criminal cases, you name it, the works and everything else. If you remember, extrajudicial killings happened as a result of the fact that they couldn't win cases. So they said, these guys shouldn't even reach court so that, we can get rid of this problem. So I think we should respect the law. We should not have public trial of institutions of state. All of them, not just the judiciary, you've got parliament, you've got all these people. Let us respect Kenya's constitution and work within it. If there is a flaw in the constitution, then let us go through the process, right process of changing the flaws in the constitution. But it should not be that if I am aggrieved, I go and shout everywhere and say, these guys need to be. I think that is setting a very bad direction for the minds of Kenyans, all the hustlers in the street. What would they do if all of a sudden somebody came there and told them, you can't do this? And then they say, no, I'm allowed to do this. I've been allowed by X, Y, and Z. Right. Get off my way. What will happen in the country? That is my concern. It's just the tone that is being set to the 50-odd million Kenyans about how we should run this country.
So this has never happened in the history of this country, just listening to senior counsel there, Aminu as well. He's never, experience or seen such lamentable comments coming from any of the officers before the previous regimes that we've had since also independence?
Yes. What you've seen, we've seen people angry with the decisions, right? And they've expressed their anger at the decision, but not gone and said the person who was given the decision ought to be hung, whatever it is, and quartered, right? And they've then gone ahead and done what they need to do, either through constitutional intervention or through other ways.
But the temerity now to actually disobey court orders, what does it really portend for the legislators, for even the Kenyans themselves, being led by the president?
Not even to the economy.
To the economy.
I'm not going to a country where there is no respect for law. And investors or resources are shy where there is no order. But I want to I think there are three things perhaps to look at. One, I'm not quite sure that office of president executive is competing with who. I really don't understand at times. Because the same office has the responsibility of creating a tribunal without even telling us. And it has happened. And that is squarely on this responsibility. It's squarely his responsibility to create, if Diba, Wainaina, McPhee are purported to be corrupt judges, from the tribunal. And it's times I tell people I don't go to church and political rallies. And I don't. Somebody is lying through their teeth. You can't question them. You just keep quiet and listen. So surely you had that dialogue, you could really ask, I think that's not true. And we all know that. I can say as much as my senior here is a corrupt person, I have to give him that process, due process. And I think the president has that responsibility. There's one thing I learned when I was in government, and thank God we had some sense of leadership. When you talk so much as a leader, you're exposing yourself. Listen. I say, tutafanya, when you have really consulted. But when I get there, I'm giving the rhetoric as doing. Let's look for more doing than the rhetoric. It's something we didn't need to. It's sad when you call an institution, and I agree with you. I recall with a lot of nostalgia, no, not nostalgia really. When the PSs, the ministers used to have a TV already in their office, recall, and they would be fired left and right.
1 o'clock news.
1 o'clock news. And the most frustrating, and I think it's not frustrating, annoying, embarrassing, is when you're a driver, they're in the car listening to the news, and in a meeting they leave. You come out here looking for the car. It's not.
So now, all the trappings that comes with the office goes away just immediately.
2003.
Yes.
2004, all those things disappeared from the office. Right. They disappeared. Because I know somebody there is in leadership. Somebody is trusting me. He's giving that responsibility.
Right.
And we learn. And some of the people in government, they have been those regimes. They have been those leadership. Let's get some cue from it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Professor Dr. McPhee, if history may bear us down as well.
Actually, should be a professor
we had the question of these corrupt judges. They were all the questionable judges that were not put in office by President Uhuru Kenyatta. But when we had President William Ruto coming to office, the first port of call was actually to, put them or reinstate them as judges. So why would he be also crying foul right now regarding corruption if they were questionable, characters?
Well, I think it's a very, very difficult thing here, and I think, you see, when you have the level of corruption, I think Patrick was mentioning that we have corruption everywhere. But when you have the level of corruption that we have in Kenya, you start to see society falling apart. And we have to be aware that, unless we all change in Kenya, we're going to destroy this country. We're on the road to destruction. Uganda is going to overtake us. Tanzania is going to overtake us. Rwanda is going to overtake us. Ethiopia has got the largest airline in Africa. It's making money. It's operating, it's got a bigger fleet than South African Airways, Kenya Airways. So we're losing out as a country. Now, we've got to change. All of us have got to change. You see, why I say this is I know two young men. They were told, look, you pay the judge 500,000 shillings each, and you will not be in jail. The judge, 2 weeks before the case was going to be heard, said, look, I'm lowering it to 300,000 shillings. They're young men, they don't have a job, they couldn't raise the money. Those two young men are in jail. They wouldn't have been in jail had they had 600,000 shillings between them. I know another case where it's dragged on, in fact, it's finally been resolved because the judge hearing the case actually departed from her post in that particular place. Now, this is happening all the time in Kenya. And, we talk about a due process, but you know that a due process very often is going to be ineffective. We don't want honesty. And mind you, it's the same in the United States. If I was in the United States, I'd vote for Vivek Ramaswamy. Why? Because he's honest. Everyone else in the US is corrupt. But anyway, coming back to Kenya's situation, see, it's a very, very difficult thing because I have a lawyer friend here, and he says, look, the judges have got to understand they're not running Kenya, because the moment a law is passed, okay, now, Parliament, those people in Parliament seldom even read the bill properly. There are lawyers in Parliament. They know sometimes that something is unconstitutional. The bill is passed. Why is it not stopped by Parliament? Because none of us are doing our jobs properly. China has taught us this. You work, you build a rich economy. This is what China has done. Which is the richest country in Europe? Germany. Why is it rich? Because they work like crazy. They do things well. And, I was telling people, you go along the street. I was actually at the university one day. I came out, Kenya Power Lighting, 6 guys were there, okay? It was sunny, not raining, okay? One fellow was working. One fellow was actually lying in the grass. I said, hey, unapumzika hapa tu. He's meant to be working. So this is what the KNEC, the Kenya National Examination Council, some students, I'm closely involved in education, okay? Because, well, I have friends in Strathmore School. I've got friends who are teachers all over the country, okay? The KNEC is not doing its work properly, So I was talking to a lady called Francisca Sorem 2 days ago. Now, she's working in the United States, okay? Now, in the year 2006, Francisca was voted the best employee in KPMG in the United States. That's what our system used to produce. Oscar Mbeche, the chief financial officer of Dangote in Nigeria, is a Kenyan. When I could give you so many examples. Stephanie Wangi, I had lunch with her on the 19th of December. She was back here to visit her family. She works in Bermuda. 2 years ago, we actually had a breakfast at Sassini, and we had the British High Commissioner there, a lady, and I was telling her, look at this lady the DJ, she was absolutely outstanding. And I said, look at this lady, how good she is. And I told the British High Commissioner, she's now left, okay, she's somewhere else. I said, look, I have a student, Stephanie Wangi, who writes English better than Charles Dickens. Now, where is Stephanie today? In Bermuda, okay? I had lunch yesterday with a lady called Flatcher Njagi. Where is she? Working in London. So the position here, okay, is that, things are falling apart in Kenya, and we as a country, we cannot be hell-bent on wealth. I don't want to be richer than Uhuru Kenyatta. I don't want to be richer than the Moi family. And, you know, if I become so incredibly rich, you know, someone was asking me the other day, you know, what's happened? Chris Kirubi, what's happening to his wealth now? Is he enjoying it? I don't know. But, you know, the point is, here we say, oh, well, you know, I've got to become richer. I was telling a family that I had lunch with on Sunday, the less you need, the more you have. And the woman, the wife of this man, said, she's a very clever woman, she's a lawyer herself, said, man, you're right. But you know, the problem here in Kenya is, I want more. And you know, very often I go to activities of the Institute of Certified Public Accountants of Kenya, and a lady comes along and said, look, please get me a bag, you know, get me the, you know, you're given all these things because, you know, somehow, if we're not given anything, we say, oh, matuni go wapi, you know? So the thing is that we want, now, let's live on less so that we lift the standard of everyone in Kenya, you know, because our trade imbalance is something phenomenal. My car has got it needs a new gearbox, okay? So actually someone gave me a lift yesterday and I had an opportunity to look around. But I was sitting in the car and we went past one of these car sales place. Man, the number of cars, this is on Ngong Road, the number of cars for sale in that place is just phenomenal. You go along to the road to Kiambu, Audis, you know, these are all German cars, okay? Audis. And, you know, so we're living, the problem is, why is the Kenya shilling falling at a faster rate than Uganda? And because the answer is we've got a bigger middle class here in Kenya. And the middle class, if you're not riding poorly, his car's not KDN. You're chuckling.
It's KDP.
Clearly?
Yes.
Oh, this proves what I'm saying. We got a, you know, the car that I came in here this morning is not my own car, okay? It's a KBT. And I thought, my God, I wish I owned this car. It's such a good car. It's a small car, but, you know, I could beat you going to, you know, let's suppose we're having a race to Nakuru. I'd get there before him. But you know, the only thing is, you see, what can the president do? Because, you know, the moment a law is passed in Kenya, people just run to the court, get a court order, and I've seen a court order used illicitly, even during Kibaki's reign, okay? And the problem is, we're too eager to run to court, get a court order, and as I say, this lawyer friend of mine says, look, you know, the judges tend to be running Kenya, and it's not a good thing, in fact, you know? It's not a good thing. So the president has a point. I think, as Patrick says, you know, you've got to use the right process, okay? But let's try to make that process work.
Indeed. Right. I think my music up. It's time to take a station break, and when we circle back, we shall hear from Dr. Shemo Chwodhor as well. The president has been encouraging Kenyans to also seek jobs abroad. As we can hear, we have some of very good sterling minds out there in very big corporations who are Kenyans.